Welcome to another chapter on strategy. Today we will look at chapter number 9. And chapter number 9 is ethics, corporate social responsibility, environmental sustainability, and strategy. So it's an important chapter. And before we go into it, actually, I'd created another set of slides for this. So let's just go over that. So now, as I had told you earlier, the best way to look at anything is using, okay, you know what, let me just add some slides over here. So that would make it easier. Okay, all right, let's go over here. So as I said, before we go into the chapter, let's look at what exactly we mean by ethics. And earlier I had said, anytime you look at anything, you want to look at, or you want to answer these questions: what, why, how, and what if. And I'm not sure if you remember this, but let me just recap. Basically, there are 4 types of people: what people, why people, how, and what if people. And these people, what if people, are usually the most patient ones. So they're the ones who will come to you and say, 2 weeks ago in chapter number 5, you talked about this. In paragraph number 4, could you please give me an example of that? So that's, what if people, they are very, very patient. Versus most of the people are in this category, what and why. So people are restless and impatient until you tell them what exactly it is. So it's very important, whatever you do, you want to focus on what and why early on. So this way people know exactly what you're talking about. So let's look at what is ethics. Ethics is basically, if you look at the standard definitions, it's a moral set of behaviors that you need to behave or act by. So the question is, should business ethics be different than ethics? Meaning, ethics is, you could have a social ethics, like the ethics with your friends and family, versus business ethics. So think about that. I'll wait. Anyway, so most of you probably are thinking business ethics is not the same as social ethics. There are different standards, and we need to. So this is the question that we're looking at. And we need to have different standards. That's what some of you might be thinking. Anyway, so what we could do is, if you look at most of the religions, they do have this golden rule, which is one should treat others as one would like to treat oneself. That is the positive form. And the silver form is kind of the negative, is one should not treat others in ways that one would not like to be treated. So basically, if you were to follow these 2 rules, you will be ethical. And in future slides, I'm going to tell you as to why it's important for people to be ethical. And if you look at, again, I put this, most of the religions, Christianity, Confucianism, Buddhism, Hinduism, all of them, Islam, Judaism, Taoism, Zoroastrianism, think of all of these have some form of golden or the silver rule. So there is ethics that is coming down from even religion, or even from a long time ago. Historically speaking, there has been an emphasis on ethical behavior. But then if you look around, you have lots of examples of unethical behavior. So, but the unethical behavior gets a lot of press, but the ethical behavior actually doesn't get as much press. This person, Harry Kramer, he was CEO of Baxter, and he found some flaws in his dialysis equipment. And so he shut down the division, took about close to $200 million worth of loss, took a pay cut. also told his competitors about the problem so they could fix their manufacturing. I mean, this is going above and beyond what anybody would have expected him to do. I mean, and plus these type of news are not in the news. And let me give you an example. Let's say, there are two guys. Let's just call one person, he's honest and ethical. Let's call him Bob. The other guy, let's just call him Tom, let's just say. And Bob is, honest, good person. He, wakes up in the morning, makes breakfast for his kids, and sits down with them, eats breakfast, and drops the kids off at school or daycare, kisses his wife goodbye, and goes to work. Does a really decent job. I mean, good job. I mean, does great job at the company. Does right things for his customers and his company. And then later on comes home, has a nice dinner with his wife and kids, and tucks the kids in bed, reads them 3 stories, sings them 5 songs, gives them 10 hugs and 20 kisses and all that. Okay, so that's our Bob, but he would never be in the news. And then there is the Tom. Tom wakes up probably on the wrong side of the bed. He probably steps on the cat and he just strangles the cat, kicks the dog, eats the breakfast which the kids have made for themselves, and even takes their lunch from their lunch boxes, just starts cursing and yelling at the neighbors, goes to work and shoots a bunch of people. Actually, he doesn't kill them, he just shoots them in their legs. So they are like a handicap for the rest of their life. Guess what? Who is going to be in the news? I know I'm painting a really drastic picture, but Tom is going to be in the news, and Bob is not going to be in the news. So that's a sad story. Somehow we are, looking for something that is out of the ordinary, because most of the people are like Bob. I mean, they do, the right things. There are very few people that are like Tom, but they're the ones in the news. So we somehow have a feeling that the whole world is bad and people are out to get us. But that's really not the story. Most of the people are nice and honest. And actually, if you look at, just like for everything in life, there's a bell-shaped curve. So most of the people are somewhere in between. Here is people that are highly moral, meaning they do everything right and everything by the book and always trying to help people. And these are the most awesome individuals who will go out of their way to help anyone as much as they can. And then on the other side, you have the highly immoral people. Actually, let me give you an example of moral. Is Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King, let's say that. And immoral would be, Hitler and Saddam Hussein and people that have done terrible things. So most of the people are in here somewhere in between. They're like, hey, whatever goes, I'm going to do that. There are very few, as I said, are moral, very few that are immoral. Now, going back to this, Frank Blake, he initially refused the job at Home Depot, and the reason for that was actually, he said, take a guess, the salary is too high. Can you think of a CEO that is going to turn down a job because the salary is too high? That's what Frank Blake did. So now you know what ethics is. And actually, business ethics, social ethics, you should always behave morally. And in a few minutes, I'll discuss that as to why that is so important. Let's just go back to this one for a second for now. And so we already discussed this. Why do people behave unethically then? Some people could say that it is societal pressures, or it is the pressure for companies to perform. Like each quarter, you're supposed to perform, supposed to come up with the numbers. So there is less focus on long-term and more focus on short-term. That could be a reason for that. And if it's not legal, if it's not illegal, you just do it, or everybody else is doing. That's why some people behave unethically. Okay. And then, what do we do, and how would you make sure that people behave ethically? And that's, let's look at here second. Okay, all right. So I was telling you about, why people should, companies should behave ethically. And here's a study that was done by Center for Ethics Research. This is a long time ago. So $30,000 were invested over a 30-year period by, when they did the study. So this 30 companies, they were selected randomly, and the return was $134,000. So $30,000, $134,000, it's more than 4 times. So roughly 4.5 times the initial investment. Okay. Now take a guess as to what would be the return on investment on companies that were run ethically. What do you think? It would be more than this or less than this? Okay. Take a guess. All right. 15 ethical companies, the return is more than $1 million. So this is what, more than 30 times. Now, you might wonder, because most of the people start when this is, I can't really see your responses or hear your responses, but in a face-to-face class, most of the people actually choose that randomly selected companies, the return would be higher, because somehow people have gotten this into their head that unless you behave unethically, you're not going to get ahead. But I'm just proving it with the numbers that you can. And actually, I'll tell you a reason why that happens. 80% of business is repeat business. Okay. You can fool somebody once, and guess what? If they're happy with your company, they're going to probably tell 10 people. But if they're mad at your company, especially in this day and age of social media and all, things going viral, you can easily reach hundreds and thousands of people really fast. So the reason for also companies to behave ethically is also a business reason, meaning 80% of the businesses is from repeat customers. So it's important to behave ethically. Now here's I'm just giving an example as to how you can make sure that students behave ethically. Let's just say, and I'm not talking about you guys. All of you are smart and intelligent. I know you behave very ethically, but this is about some other class, all right? So ethical behavior of students. So if I want students to behave ethically, let's just say, and let's just give an example of goal, exam. And it's an exam and the goal is cheating. Now I could give a take-home exam. Guess what? Most of you are saying, yeah, there's going to be plenty of cheating there. How about I give you an exam in a classroom, give out the papers, and I say I'll come back after an hour. So there is no supervision. There will be plenty of cheating as well. Or supervision at scheduled times, meaning I say, okay, I'm going to come back every 20 minutes and I'm going to check what's going on. Again, there'll be cheating. Now, the best solution is continuous supervision. Now, you must be thinking, why am I giving you this example? This is exactly what happens in corporations. If you think of FDA, Food and Drug Administration, guess how most of the drugs are approved? They're approved on this take-home test, kind of. So, like, let's say, I'm just giving an example, Johnson & Johnson. Let's say they want a particular drug to be approved. And again, not picking on Johnson & Johnson, just giving an example. So Johnson & Johnson, they want a drug to be approved. The FDA says, okay, go ahead, do your test and just give us the results. So typically the FDA is not involved. Johnson & Johnson goes, and let's say they've done studies on, let's say 200, they say that they've done studies in 200 mice, and 100 of them were cured and 50 of them were not cured. There wasn't any effect, and 50 of them showed mild, some sort of a negative reaction. So that's probably their study. And nobody actually checks if Johnson & Johnson really had 200 mice. And there have been cases where people have just fabricated data where there was no study done, or let's say there were 20 mice that were tested and all of them died. But guess what? Even though that could be the case, because 80% of your business is repeat business, most of the companies actually don't cheat. Or even if they cheat, they do it in such a way that it doesn't hurt the customers. There are some companies that do cheat. And most of the process is also unsupervised. And actually, this is an interesting thing. The Foxconn factory in China, and after people started jumping off Foxconn buildings, and then Apple started monitoring those, and but even in those factories, actually people are told as to, okay, Wednesday at 10 o'clock there's going to be a team that's going to come to inspect your property. And so typically what they do is anybody who's going to be a troublemaker, they know they just give them tickets for a show or a movie or something, so this way the troublemakers are not there. So that's what happens. But then you might start wondering why there isn't continuous supervision. Actually, continuous supervision is extremely expensive. You can't have inspectors everywhere. And market forces are sometimes the best bet, meaning if the reason why company would behave ethically is if the word gets out that they're behaving unethically, then the company might lose their reputation and brand image in the market. And that is very expensive. I mean, it takes years and years to build a solid brand and an image, and you could lose that, just by taking some shortcuts in just a few minutes or a few hours. So that's why most of the companies do not behave unethically. I mean, so that's why, whenever you see the examples of unethical behavior, actually those are the minority companies. And, so for corporate ethical behavior, you could think of these are the entities that can actually make sure that companies behave ethically. Consumers, you could argue that government, I mean, some people think, and that's probably true, is most of the governments are actually, you call it campaign finance or bribe or whatever, are run by corporations. So there isn't much to do, but consumers is a pretty good bet. And corporations, I mean other corporations that are either supplying to them or buying things from them. Nonprofit, there are nonprofit and media that can do their job to make sure that companies behave ethically. So that's one thing. And as I said earlier, I'm going to take it in a slightly different direction because I just want to show you something interesting over here. And there was a study done on health, wealth and happiness, like money and happiness. And it seems, and this was done a while ago, a few years back, and Mexico seems to be on top. And actually, it can be explained by these two words. You just have to add F or S. Anyway, so actually, jokes apart, the more social connections you have, and there are some people that actually hit their relatives, but anyway, the more social connections you have, the more likely you're going to have a happier life. The less social connections you have, or the more isolated you are, the more likely that even though you might have a lot of money, but you may not be that happy. That is definitely true for Japan because lots of people just are single and just living alone, miserable lives. Then the communist countries seem to are also low on happiness because of people aren't free to do what they want to do. So freedom is also another measure of happiness. So, but then there are countries in Africa that are not that happy just because they're so poor. I mean, they're always constantly struggling to make ends meet. Anyway, so I just wanted to show you an interesting point. So happiness doesn't actually depend upon money. I mean, if you do the right things for the right reasons, you'll be happier. You could be a millionaire and have a miserable life. And this is another chart. This is an interesting chart. I mean, this is just to illustrate how important the U.S. economy is. I mean, let's say Texas economy is as big as Canada's economy. So yeah, that's how important U.S. is in terms of global, uh, global trade and economic growth. And if you look at California, that's like France, and Russia is New Jersey. You don't see India and China here because they're bigger than just one state. So anyway, this kind of gives you a perspective. Since you are business students, I wanted you to have a perspective of how important US is in terms of global business. And in the next chart, I will show you why people don't care about what happens in Africa, because money-wise, or in terms of trade and global economy, Africa doesn't really exist on the map. So this is it. You see, this is Africa. It's almost insignificant. Versus you have U.S. and European countries, China, India, Japan. They are huge. So that's why anything, millions of people are dying in Africa and nobody really cares, because it doesn't affect anybody's business, meaning the profits are not affected by this. So again, as a business student, I want you to keep in mind that, yes, there are things that are happening, but why media doesn't pay attention, or why there isn't much attention paid, is because simple reason, those regions do not matter that much. And in the face-to-face classes, I typically have, throw this question out: which is better, good people versus greedy people? And this is interesting thing that you can start thinking about is most of the harm. And again, this is, I just want you to think about it. I'm not, saying one way or the other. I just want you to think about this. And in the 80s, there was this, if anybody has seen the movie, The Wall Street, the one with Michael Douglas and Charlie Sheen. Michael Douglas, he says, greed is good. That's what he says. And I mean, greed up to a certain extent is good. And I'm going to talk about that here. But if it goes beyond, when you start hurting people, that's when it is bad. So here, there is, most of the harm in the world is done by good people or their blind followers, certain true when you think of religion, socialism, communism, nationalism, because the idea was good, but then the execution wasn't good. And some of the ideas are bad too, but people wanted to make the world a better place. And most of the good in the world has been done by greedy people out to better themselves. Certainly true when you think of all these things. So imagine that you invent a vaccine or something and you say, hey, you know what, this is good. Let me just start selling it. And, the more you sell it, the more people you're helping. And then you start increasing the price. Up to a certain extent, it is a good thing, meaning, you are, because there is demand, so you are increasing the price. So certain extent, it is okay. But if you start doing something like Martin Shkreli, the guy who jacked up the prices like 500%, and so 1,000%, I don't know, 5,000%, then that's not good. So greed is good. A little bit of greed is good, meaning you are trying to make a better life for yourself and for your family and friends. But if you start hurting other people, then that's not good. That's what I'm trying to say over here. And want and greed are why humanity is freer, healthier, and comfortable than it's ever been. Nearly every significant innovation, invention, or improvement that man has so far come up with resulted from the innovator, the inventor, or the improver's desire to better his or her own condition, or put differently, to get more stuff. That's a person that has said, Radley Balco has said that, and that does make a lot of sense. And again, greed up to a certain extent is good, but if you start hurting people, then that's not good. And also that goes into the unethical category. So conclusion, money is a terrible master, but a great servant. P.D. Barnum, that money doesn't change men, it just unmasks them. Be honest, earn your money, be generous, use credit wisely and sparingly, live within your means. And almost every wise man has said this. So anyway, I just want to wrap this chapter up. So as I showed you over here, you don't have to take shortcuts to make money. being ethical is good for business. So think about that. When somebody starts saying, "Oh, I got to do, bend the rules to." By the way, there's this cleaning crew going by, so that's the noise. Anyway, so that really doesn't is hold true in the long run. So be ethical, and it's going to be all good. Let's switch over to the other parts over here, which is this chapter, and we talked about. Okay, now we talked about ethics, and let's quickly talk about corporate social responsibility and environmental sustainability and strategy, meaning you need to be a good citizen when you are acting the and let's include all of this, is you need to act in a way that is responsible, and you do not pollute the resources, you use the resources wisely, you're not hurting the community, the three P's: people, planet, and profit, so they all go together. So that's what it is, because ultimately that is good for your strategy and it's good for your business. So any strategy that actually is ethical, takes care of corporate social responsibility, and takes care of the environment is actually a good business strategy for the long run. In the short run, yeah, you might start thinking that that's not good, but in the long run, it definitely is good. So, as I mentioned, ethics, just like the golden rule, silver rule, meaning do the things that you want others to do to you, and don't do the things that you don't want others to do to you. And it's very important to behave ethically because 80% of your business is repeat business. So it's important to keep that in mind. And also the flip side is, if your business starts behaving unethically, you do have you can face lots of government fines and penalties, and plus you lose your reputation. So it's not a good business strategy as well. All right, so thank you for watching this video, and I will see you in future videos. Thank you.